Okay, welcome everybody to today's Mothers Out Front Climate Action Call on transforming the National Farm Bill. My name is Frances Big DePayton. I'm from the Healthy Soils Action Group. For those not familiar with climate action calls, for the next 45 minutes, you're going to have a chance to learn about the federal farm bill and take action to transform it to support soil health, carbon drawdown, regenerative agriculture, and justice for everyone. Can I have the first slide, please? Ooh, back up. I wanted to just briefly review the agenda. First, to welcome everyone, I invite you to put your name and your town and if you're with any organization in the chat right now. And if you would, in your Zoom picture, maybe next to your name, do the rename and put what town you're from so we can see you in the Zoom pictures as well for those of us who are looking at Zoom in addition to following the chat. We're going to have a brief presentation about the two acts that we are supporting today, the Regenerative Agriculture Act and the Justice for Black Farmers Act. Then we're going to have a brief meeting with a local farmer, which I'm looking forward to hearing, and then our chance to take action together, which we'll walk through so you'll know how to do that. And then there'll be a final meeting, a final group together at the end. We're going to talk about next steps and what else is available and what you'll be getting in the mail. Slide. Besides renaming yourself, if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the chat. Mute yourself during this call. Closed captioning is available. And for those who may not want to be recorded, you should turn your video off because there will be recording taken of this slide. And welcome everybody. Look at all those nice happy faces. Next slide. I want to introduce our group. The Healthy Soils Livable Action Group is the sponsor for today. And our mission is to protect and restore soil health to nurture a livable climate and also a just food system. What we do is we educate other chapters and the general public about the role of healthy soil and carbon drawdown and healthy food. We inspire other chapters to learn more and to take action on soil issues like pesticides and composting. We connect with allies because we're not in this alone, that's for sure. We do advocacy projects like we're doing today for soil-related legislation at the state and national level, all of which is centered on environmental justice and food issues. So this is what our mission is. We hope that anyone who may be interested will join us. We will put our email on the link. There's always chances in our group to use your skills and tell us your interests so we can work together on these important issues. Next slide, please. We also want to thank NOFA for its continuing commitment to education and advocacy to promote organic agriculture and also to allow us to use their action network today. Slide. I'm going to turn this over to Liz McInerney, a member of our group who will do the next portion. She's going to be providing background about the Farm Bill, talking about why it's important now to take this action so we can have a just and sustainable food system. Liz?
Thank you, Frances. As mentioned, I'm Liz McInerney from the Healthy Soil Livable Future Action Group. And while I reside in Cambridge, we are going to do a land acknowledgement focused on Boston, since that's a general area for most of us. So working with our partner organizations, we honor our pledge to center justice by acknowledging that in Boston, we are living and working from the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts, Pawtucket, and Namkiag. As we all work to heal the destruction caused by colonization, we appreciate your support, solidarity, and continued learning. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for joining us today. We will start with some Farm Bill background. The Farm Bill governs an array of agriculture and food programs. It is an omnibus bill, which means it is a spending bill that packages many appropriations bills into one that can be passed with only one vote in each house of Congress. The Farm Bill is also a multi-year bill and is reauthorized approximately every 5 years. It is organized into segments called titles. At enactment in 2018, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the 2018 Farm Bill would cost about $107 billion per year, or $428 billion over 5 years. I'm sorry, 528. Anyway, the 2023 bill is currently estimated at $140 billion a year, or $700 billion over 5 years. So this is a lot of dollars that profoundly impact both what and how food is grown. Next slide, please. We can loosely associate the titles into which the Farm Bill is divided with these slices and slivers of the pie you see here. The largest piece in blue is nutritional assistance. This piece was added in 1973. While we aren't focused on the nutrition part of the Farm Bill in this climate action call, be assured there are organizations working to improve the nutrition programs, the food side of the Farm Bill, if you will. For now, we're going to go back to the farm side with a brief history. Next slide, please. Agricultural policy on the federal level began in the United States with the Homesteading Act, 40 acres and a mule, and the creation of land-grant universities in the 1800s. The U.S. Department of Agriculture was established by President Lincoln in 1862. The Farm Bill began in earnest in 1933 as the Agricultural Adjustment Act, signed into law by President Roosevelt to address the grave conditions during the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. The Farm Bill would help farmers with credit availability, marketing practices, and consumer protection, particularly through meat inspection. And the Farm Bill did its job. Crop insurance, crop loans, training programs, and money for conservation efforts stabilized those food prices and preserved farming. However, there are also negative outcomes of those Farm Bill programs. Next slide, please. The conventional industrial farming methods, including the use of pesticides and fertilizers, supported by the funding programs of the Farm Bill, contribute to soil depletion and environmental degradation. And these insurance and loan programs have been biased against Black and brown farmers, upholding structural racism. And this is current. Black farmers, led by John Boyd Jr., were awarded a large settlement in a 1999 court case against the USDA. To date, few payments have been made. Next slide, please. So we need a Farm Bill that is transformative to move the United States away from farming that exploits land, water, air, people, and livestock, and instead move toward a food system that creates more biodiverse, equitable, and regenerative farms, increases soil health, including carbon capture, reduces fossil fuel and pesticide use in farming practices, is community-based, just, and resilient. We want our legislators to hear our voices, the mother's voice, in support of sustainability and justice. Next slide, please. Our efforts for this call are focused on two specific bills in the 2023 Farm Bill renewal. These bills are being proposed as marker bills to signal policy ideas and gather support for those ideas with the goal of inclusion in the omnibus bill. It's important to emphasize that the structural racism embedded in the USDA and not addressed in previous farm bills created barriers for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and hindered new farmers in their access to land and USDA support programs. For instance, white farm loan applications were processed in an average of 60 days, compared to 220 days for Black applicants. Those days are critical for growing crops. Black families were not given 40 acres and a mule during the homesteading era, and promises of land ownership made during Reconstruction after the Civil War were broken. From 26 to 2016, Black farmers were foreclosed on at a higher rate than any other race, making up 13% of USDA foreclosures, but they are less than 3% of the farm loan recipients. Next slide, please. So we join NOFA and other allies in supporting the Justice for Black Farmers Act proposed by Senator Cory Booker, who is joined by Senator Elizabeth Warren, among others. This bill is aimed at addressing and correcting historic discrimination within the USDA. Next slide, please. The priorities of this bill are to create an independent civil rights board to review complaints against USDA, end discrimination in federal farm assistance and lending, protect land ownership among the remaining Black farmers, and provide land grants to create a new generation of Black farmers. Next slide, please. John Boyd Jr. is a fourth-generation farmer in Virginia, a very rare fourth-generation farmer anywhere. He says the Justice for Black Farmers Act is the most ambitious legislative proposal ever developed to address historic and ongoing discrimination against Black farmers who have been systemically denied access to land, subsidies, loans, and other critical tools. By providing new access to land and credit, providing debt relief, the Justice for Black Farmers Act will help right these historic wrongs and will ensure that Black farmers have the tools they need to succeed. These reforms are long overdue. Next slide, please. The current Farm Bill continues to prioritize conventional agricultural models, allocating approximately 1% of funds for educational, renewable, and regenerative solutions. That was the very skinny yellow sliver in the pie chart we showed earlier. Next slide, please. Therefore, we also support the Agricultural Resilience Act introduced by Shelley Pingree, a House Democrat from Maine who is a farmer. This act sets a national goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture by 2040. Next slide, please. The priorities of this bill are investment in soil health and research. Massachusetts is out ahead of this with a soil action plan that covers the whole state and all soil types. Now we just need to get it funded. The Agricultural Resilience Act also encourages transitioning to pasture-based livestock and away from the confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, that are currently part of our animal protein farming. The ARA also ensures farmland viability and preservation, including water rights and pollution control, and waste reduction. Nutrient cycling is critical to sustainability. This is an ambitious goal for farms all over the nation and will require a great deal of grassroots support. Next slide, please. Shelley Pingree sums it up best. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues for farmers and our food system, which is why we must prioritize climate-smart solutions in the next Farm Bill. Across the US, farmers are on the front lines of the climate crisis, dealing with severe drought, flooding, wildfires, and other extreme weather conditions. Challenges of this scale demand bold solutions. Unlike other industries, agriculture is unique in that crops can draw down carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the soil. It is time to make soil health part of the climate solution. Next slide, please. Now I am pleased to introduce Julia Coffey, who founded Mycoterra Farms in the woodlands of West Hampton. A passion for growing things grew into a business of her own. Her mushroom farm became an excellent complement to the Pioneer Valley's robust local agricultural economy. She also works diligently to bring locally grown food to communities in Massachusetts with mass food delivery. Thank you for coming, Julia.
Hello, I'm Julia Coffey, and in addition to operating Mycoterra Farm and mass food delivery, I'm a single mother of an 8-year-old. I've been working in farming and food systems for 24 years. I established Mycoterra Farm in 2010, where we grow certified organic mushrooms indoors year-round. as well as 1/2 acre of no-till seasonal crops. In March of 2020, I founded Mass Food Delivery to make connections between Mycoterra Farm, other local farms and producers, and consumers throughout Massachusetts during the pandemic. As we work to maintain food access during those unprecedented times, we gained insights on the many weaknesses in our food system that have left us vulnerable. Mass Food Delivery became a hub of a robust variety of food from local farms and producers. However, while we have a vibrant local food system, Massachusetts simply doesn't produce enough food to feed our population. This underscores the imminent need to protect our agricultural resources. We need not only to protect old farms, some of the biggest landowners in the state, but we also need more farms and a greater diversity of farmers and operations. Justice for Black farmers is critical in improving land access and promoting diversity and equity in the agricultural community. Protecting agricultural resources needs a multifaceted approach, literally from the soil up, but also from the top down on the highest policy levels through the Farm Bill. Today, Mass Food Delivery continues humble but important work reshaping the connections between producers and consumers and improving food access and local food system sustainability. And Mycoterra Farm has come full circle many times over. I named Mycoterra Farm for the Latin roots of mushrooms and land to keep me connected to the soil science origins for my passion for fungi. On the farm, we are working to maximize the soil carbon sequestered on our little 1/2 acre. Our soils hold over 40 tons of carbon, nearly 10 times the average for agricultural soils in the eastern United States. Currently, there are few incentives for farms to adopt climate positive practices like the no-till strategies we use on my farm. Instead, destructive practices are subsidized on the largest scales. I urgently encourage you to support the ecological climate change provision of the Farm Bill, which connects soil health to food systems. These policy level changes are as urgent as the work on the ground. I am often reminded how appropriate the term grassroots organizing is as I wrestle through the tightly woven and resilient networks in my fertile farm soils. Farmers, especially those trying to change by adopting practices that maximize soil carbon on their farms, need your voices to enact change. Please support justice for Black farmers and ecological climate change in the Farm Bill today. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Next slide, please. So time to take action. You might be saying, why is it now? It's because the Farm Bill is going to get voted on in the fall. And now is the time to have our voices about what kind of policies we want it to contain. Next slide, please. I'm going to walk you through 2 actions that we're going to be doing today. There's further information about these in the chat, but let me do a walkthrough. The first action is to email our federal legislators and tell them we want these 2 acts passed because we care about food justice, we care about regenerative agriculture, we care about the planet that we're leaving for our children. The second action is to contact family and friends and tell them why we're doing this and that we think that their voices would also make sense to be heard, especially people in other states. And I should say that, by stopping for a second here, we have some people from this call who are from other states. We really appreciate their being here because this is a national bill. So reach out to people who maybe you think are in Ohio or somewhere else and tell them why you care. Next slide, please. Action 1 will be to email our federal legislators. You're going to copy the link from the chat. It's pretty well marked. Follow the instructions that are there. It tells you first to fill out your name and then it clicks you onto the slide. And then it will, I highly recommend that you personalize your emails so there's a better chance of their being read. Talk about who you are, a parent, why you care, what difference this makes. Very important. Remember, we're prioritizing the first 2 marker bills. They're called Agriculture Resilience and Justice for Black Farmers. The NOFA has other bills, which we did not do a program on today, but you may want to go back and look at some of those other bills at another time. Remember, we're focusing on the first 2 marker bills. Next slide, please. The second action, as I said earlier, is to connect to family and friends. We have a brief letter that you can copy. and paste it into go to your email, find 5 people that you might send it to and paste it in. And remember again to personalize it, thinking of you, whatever. I know you care about the environment, and this one's really going to make a difference. And it's the fall that we're talking about. So this is an important one to do now. Next slide, please. So let's make those calls. Let's send out those emails, let's just send out the emails now to family, friends, and legislators. All the instructions are in the chat. Please mute yourself. If you have a problem, we will be here. Just unmute and we'll try to help you with your problem. And then remember to remute afterwards. And be back at 12:40 because then you can hear about what the next steps are going to be. Thank you, everyone, for taking these actions. See you at 12:40. Welcome back, everybody. Can I have the next slide? Let's face it, big agriculture has been lobbying for a while. They need to hear our voices about what we want. We want regenerative agriculture that's soil friendly, and we want justice for everybody. So that's why we're doing this, so we can counter voices that have been heard too long. Next slide. What you're going to get in your email is an action toolkit, and we'll be sure to have the correct Senate and House numbers on those bills. You'll get a copy of the slides, you'll get a copy of the recording, and we ask you to forward it to your network. And we'll also remind people to please join our action group if this is an interest of yours. We could use help with your skills, your interest, and your enthusiasm. Next slide. I wanted to remind people that this is a monthly call, and the next one is going to be by the Clean Heat and Clean Air people, and they haven't announced a specific topic, so they said you should look forward to it because you never know what you're going to get. But like this one, it's a chance to see other people, it's a chance to learn about these bills and actions, and actually to take action together. Next slide. There is also a monthly call where you get to find out about Mothers Out Front. I guess the next one is June 8th. It's going to be, there's an interactive call where you can tell people who you are, what you're interested in, and find out a little bit about Mothers Out Front. And everyone is invited to those. You will get information about how to come to an action of one of these get to know you calls if you haven't done it already. And our final slide. Thank everybody. If you haven't finished all your actions, you will get additional slides that will go over everything again, how to get to these links, and you can do it at your leisure. But we hope that you do it and send it out to people in other places because this is how we're going to move forward together as we care about our kids, we care about climate justice, and we certainly care about healthy soils because they're the foundation of biodiversity. They're the foundation for a climate that's going to last healthily going into the future. So thank everyone for being here, and let's keep at it. Thank you for coming.